Yo, what's up fellow Zelda enthusiasts? It's time to tour the original home of the Zonai. From grasslands and forests to mountains and beaches, Faron is one of the most beautiful regions in all of Hyrule, and perhaps my personal favorite. Bordered to the north by the Great Plateau and all of Necluda, to the west by a mountain range separating from the Gerudo Desert, and east and south it's surrounded by the Necluda and Faron Seas. In Breath of the Wild, this region is revealed by the lake and Faron Sheikah Towers, almost perfectly to how we'll cover things today, while in Tears of the Kingdom it's covered by the Poplar Foothills and Rebella Wetlands Skyview Towers, which both sprawl out deep into Necluda. In fact, we won't even visit the site of the Skyview Towers today because I already did that in the Necluda comparison tour. We'll begin south of the Great Plateau in the Teobob grasslands and work our way all the way up east to the tip of Soka Point. So let's just get going. Kicking things off with a fun one, in Breath of the Wild, a band of wild horses grazes in the Teobob grasslands. But among them is not just any horse, it's the giant descendant of Ganondorf's horse from Ocarina of Time. And exactly where this herd once ran free is now a fallen sky boulder, and a gloom spawn resides right next to it. Heading south into what becomes the Osiria Plains, there's a pillar of rock. On top of it in Breath of the Wild was a stone talus, and in Tears is a Follow the Flower Trail Korok puzzle that begins where the talus was. Honestly, I think this is a missed opportunity to make a simple lift up the stone puzzle, but I digress. A bit more south, also elevated from the plains, on the cliffside used to be the Ishoto So Shrine, sitting on a pile of filth. Nearby is an NPC named Moza, who's a terrible cook, but now it's a Hylian named Barles, who's trying to clean up this mess and sets off the Great Tumbleweed Purge side quest. Heading back down into the plains, two red Lionels once patrolled this area. Now they're gone, but replaced by one blue Lionel farther south in the Natal wetlands. Northeast into the Papetto Grove. There used to be a skull enemy fort that's so heavily guarded you don't even need to beat them all up to turn the Purple Eyes gold and unlock it. If you sneak in or go guns blazing, you'll get 5 bomb arrows from a chest between 2 skull torches. This one's been upgraded to a triple stacked stone skull enemy fort. And there are 2 chests here now. One of them contains a bomb barrel spear, so 1 big explosive projectile instead of 5 small ones, while everything in the tower on the lower level is now blockaded off. Crossing through the grove, we reach the end of the path where the mounted archery camp used to be. This is also where an NPC named Staraya likes to hang. He tells you about how to find the giant horse, but obviously we don't need his help. And of course now the camp is gone, but instead Addison is found here trying to keep a Hudson sign upright. He has my support. Heading west, back over the Papetto Grove, up on the hillside in Tears, we find the Zonai Ishokin Shrine, but it needs a crystal brought to it, which requires bringing a giant horse to the man further up the hillside. I found nothing of interest in Breath of the Wild when visiting these sites with my big horse, or otherwise, and we'll see where that giant horse is in Tears in a moment. Eastward into the Parash Plains, we find the first 2 of many Faron double Korok spots. First, we have a row of 5 offering statues, one of which needs an apple. Then in Tears, their bowls are removed and you need to catch the Korok weaving between them. The other was a trail of flowers leading to the top of a hill in Breath of the Wild, and in Tears of the Kingdom, there's a rock to lift where that flower trail ends. Moving north-northwest to the shore of Lake Hylia, there's yet another double Korok spot. On the way there, it's interesting to note there's a road here not marked on the map in Breath of the Wild or in Tears of the Kingdom. It's just there, but not there. Anyway, the puzzle on the shore is a metal block puzzle rearrangement in both games, but obviously they've changed up the solution. You can almost see the thought process of the Tears of the Kingdom development team combing over the overworld and being like, yep, it's still a good place for a Korok puzzle. Leave it alone. What do you mean put a lift up the rock? Nah, deadlines are coming up soon. Anyway, farther northeast, along the side of Mount Flora, is a dragon tier marked by geoglyph number 10, a king's duty. the one where Rauru and Zelda have a serious heart-to-heart on the eve of the imprisoning war. And now I didn't test to see if this was consistent or random, but when I arrived here in Breath of the Wild, a Stall Moblin spawned, so it's a subtle swap of stuff by developers in my book. Heading east onto Hylia Island in the center of Lake Hylia is a shrine for a chasm swap. Where we used to unlock the Ya Naga shrine, we can now drop down the Lake Hylia chasm. I find it cool they chose this type of change here for two reasons. First, because of how close we are to the Great Plateau, which had all 4 shrines changed to chasms, but mostly because I can see how this spot was probably envisioned as a good location for a chasm in general, being already dug out the same and on somewhat of a prominent island. One of the smaller islands surrounding this one has the same exact Korok puzzle between games, where you must examine the fairy lights at the top of the tree. At the north end of the bridge of Hylia, we can make our way south over the lake, and doing so takes us along the path of 2 Koroks under the bridge, where one used to be in a balloon under a broken pillar, but now the Korok is hanging from a jar underneath that same pillar. Then moving into the center of the bridge used to be 3 Lizalfos holding down the fort, but now it's a single Flame Gleeok. Kind of a trade of quality versus quantity, and sort of staying in the 3-headed reptilian motif. And then along the bridge down to the other side, the other double Korok spot where there was a flower trail running down the side to the broken pillar, now some fairy lights to examine on this same pillar. From here, looking out onto the other side of Lake Hylia we haven't visited yet, you can see a whirlpool has formed. It's an explorable cave that contains the Enema Shrine. Enema? Really? They couldn't come up with a better name for this one? Because honestly, when you think about it, I'm gonna say this is the work of someone's sense of humor. Maybe I just have a messed up mind. It's not a weird coincidence. I don't know. Moving on. Back to the shore, there used to be a tree with an acorn you could shoot for a Korok seed. Now that tree is gone, but the ground is still green where it was, and at the center is a rock to lift for a seed. Southwest and southeast of here are 2 more examples of the same exact Korok puzzle, so a quadruple Korok spot, if you will, going from 2 different boulder roll in the holes, where you both already have the boulder in the hole now and need to take it out and place it in the sand next to where the boulder originally was. West of here is the Lake Tower in Breath of the Wild. At its base used to be much rockier and guarded by enemies, and exactly where it stood, a flower trail Korok puzzle begins and ends in Tears of the Kingdom. Then a bit farther west, back to the shore of Lake Hylia, is the entry to the Korra Lakefront Cave, which goes through and through and contains large luminous stone deposits. The other end is actually on the Korra Lakefront, and in Breath of the Wild, there's an underhang opening where water flows from. And on a little outcrop of rock on the cliffside above here is yet another identical Korok Lift Up the Rock puzzle. Southeast, across the Minot River into the Harfin Valley, a Stalnox used to reside. However, he's moved out and the new tenant is a blue-maned Lionel. Now we can head all the way down south to Puffer Beach to see our old friends Loon and Roscoe. Well, only in Breath of the Wild, because there's no evidence they were ever here in Tears of the Kingdom. When we take Roscoe to the pedestal, it brings up the Shoka Tatone Shrine, which a skyrock marks the place of now, and up on the mushroom-shaped pillar above is a double Korok spot where in Breath of the Wild we lift a rock, and in Tears of the Kingdom use a bunch of rocks to uncork the trapped little guy. Heading east along Puffer Beach, there's a cove with another double Korok spot. It was a jump through the seaweed ring puzzle. Now, where the center of the ring was, there's a jar floating on the surface you just gotta break. Then, just north of this cove is the Puffer Beach Overhead Cave. Its entry is overhead in the ceiling of overhanging rock, so you've got to enter with a shield rocket or some other Zonai device solution. In this cave, guarded by a couple Horriblins, you'll find a chest containing the Phantom Helmet. Continuing east a bit, the beach changes names to the Como Shoreline and has its own cave. This one has a chest with an ancient blade inside, which is interesting because in Breath of the Wild, the would-be entry is marked by a decayed guardian. This cave also tunnels through and through to the north to connect to the Highland Stable well, which throws a bit of a wrench in the works of my intended tour routing, so let's double back down south and return to the stable in a moment. Because right now I want to visit the old home of the Horse God. We already saw Malenia has moved to Akkala, but in Breath of the Wild he had a beachfront property secluded by the Abera Butte. Where Malenia's spring once was is where we now find the giant white horse for that shrine quest I mentioned a little while ago. Obviously it's not the same giant horse as Breath of the Wild. We can ride this old girl out of here, and as we do, we'll pass 2 more double Korok spots, both being the boulder in the hole out of the hole with the sand sticks deal. Now I know I said in one of my earlier episodes of this series I would treat Koroks as a back burner information thing, but as we've gone on, it's become more and more difficult to ignore them. Now we can head to the Highland Stable and register these behemoths if we want to. And since we've already seen down the Highland Stable well from coming the other way, let me just note how it's missing in Breath of the Wild, and instead we find a patch of land with a wooden roofed structure shading it. There's a second well near the stable named the Huron Lakefront Well, where we find a woman named Sagesa who helps with one of the Lucky Clover Gazette stories. This one's also absent in Breath of the Wild. And of course, there's always a shrine nearby every stable in both games. In this case, in Breath of the Wild, it's the Kyle-McKeg, which is surrounded by a bunch of shrubbery that's still there, now with some mighty thistle. And the shrine in Tears is the Utsus Hawk, where we find nothing in Breath of the Wild. East from here is an enemy stone skull fort that was just a patch of dirt during the Calamity, and a cherry blossom tree in Tears of the Kingdom, which was a patch of rock. Heading north into the woods is where we start encountering Old Zonai ruins, the first of which is this square stage with a pillar at the center. There used to be a chest with 5 shock arrows inside, now is a pinwheel that spawns balloon targets for a Korok. Farther north are a few excavation sites or man-made caves. The Pago Woods has 3 lasers to block, which opens doors leading to a large Zonai charge. A bit more north from here, as we pass by more ruins, we arrive at the entry of the Finra Woods excavation site, which used to be the Pumag Nate Shrine. Inside this cave is a device to turn to open the gate for another Zonai charge. Directly east, at the source of the Floria River, used to be a chest with a gold rupee inside, and jumping off the rock into the Ring of Lilies would spawn a Korok. Now it's a Korok block puzzle to make a short dock extending from the rock. And right near here, crossing over the river, we have the Floria River upstream excavation site. Another simple puzzle to solve for opening a gate, this time with a topaz instead of a Zonai charge. And then just over the hill from here, there's a hollowed out boulder type feature with bombable rock covering the entrance in both games, although in Breath of the Wild we found 4 ore deposits inside, and in Tears of the Kingdom a bunch of keys would come flooding out at you once you'd open it, but there is a treasure chest with a forest dweller's sword inside as well. Northwest from here, in between peaks of the Feroge Hills, there's a pool with a treasure chest in both games. It contained a purple rupee in Breath of the Wild, and a large Zonai charge atop a giant chunk of sky debris in Tears of the Kingdom, so something valuable found in each. But hold your thoughts on the state of the Hyrulean economy for a little bit, we'll come back to that. There also used to be fairies found around here. Now, I already had way too many in Tears of the Kingdom, so I'm not sure if they still hang out here, but they didn't spawn for me. Continuing northwest is another boulder hole roll it in, take it out puzzle. Absolutely insane how many times they reused this type of puzzle in this area. And then directly east, back up on the Feroge Hills, used to be a flooded bit of land with 2 Korok fairy lights running a path chasing each other. This area has mostly dried up and now features a gigantic monster stronghold where they're holding our friend Hino hostage again. And east of here takes us to the Spring of Courage. At the mouth of the Serpent River, there's a sort of double shrine spot in Breath of the Wild. Behind the door that opens when you offer a Feroge scale to the goddess statue is the Shea Katha shrine. And if you were able to ascend through the ceiling of this room, you'd pop out almost exactly where the Jakuum shrine will eventually be. Atop a tree, growing from the gigantic dragon head statue housing the goddess statue, was a rock to lift for a Korok seed. Now there's a platform on the dragon's spike, which spawns a ring of light you must race to atop that tree where the rock was. And now there used to be a lot more Lizalfos presence around the Spring of Courage, maybe suggesting you needed to be braver or have more courage to come here in the first place. And there still is some heading downstream the Drakozu River, but overall, it's a much more peaceful place than it was. South now to the Sarjan Woods Cave, which follows a river that eventually leads down to the Rubber Helm. And just south of the entry to this cave, there was another one of those hollowed out boulder features where in Breath of the Wild inside we found 4 luminous stone deposits, and in Tears of the Kingdom there's one of those ascend through the platform on the ceiling Korok puzzles. Southwest from here, on top of the butte running along Martha's Landing, was a spiral rock placement Korok puzzle, but now a Thunder Gleeok occupies this space. And we have another small road extension bringing the path that used to end at the base of this rock a bit further all the way to the edge of the beach. Not anything especially significant or important, these are just the things I notice. Heading east and up in elevation are 2 more double Korok spots. First is a giant owl offering statue that wanted a hardy durian. Now on top of this statue is a dandelion to slice and catch. And this is as good a spot as any to mention how the hardy durian trees are all gone now, which is a shame because I really missed the abundant hardy food during my first Tears of the Kingdom playthrough, but I digress. Then on a rock in the center of a poisonous muddy muck bog was a rock to lift, and now the little dude is bouncing around the rock until you catch him. This brings us to a nearby Zonai shrine, the Jou-Oo-Oo, which is kind of fun to say. Its Sheikah counterpart is the Shai-O-To, which is located inside one of Breath of the Wild's few unnamed cave systems, which is disappointingly inaccessible in Tears. These 2 shrines are used for easy access to the lakeside stable. Now its well is lower mid-tier. The most curious thing about it is that it looks like someone threw an apple down it because there's one in the water as you drop inside that just seems out of place. Then just a tiny bit northwest of the stable is the Uboda Point Cave, one of the easiest to miss cave openings as the entrance is but a tiny hole in the wall behind a tree where there was a seam between 2 rocks meeting. But that's fine because besides a bubble frog, this cave isn't even worth finding anyway. Heading southeast all the way to the edge of Uboda Point, overlooking Arsis Beach, there used to be an enemy fort, and more specifically, a rock on the edge with a Korok underneath it. Now part of this plateau has crumbled away to create the entry to the Rosla Lake Cave. Dropping down inside, like a well, we find a uniquely elaborate Zonai-themed set of ruins. On the upper level is one of those owl statues missing its head. Ascending from here puts us in front of another owl statue, which used to be a Korok offering puzzle, but now is a Gloomspawn trap. Now, heading northwest over Lake Floria, let's check out the Pharaon Tower, namesake of this region. Where it was is now a Korok block puzzle. On the next step up from here, where there was another Korok giant owl offering statue, is now another Gloomspawn trap. Then continuing up, approaching the top of Kama Plateau, is a Hinox and a Lynel in both games, but where the Hinox was is now a Lynel and vice versa. Well, sorta. You see, the Hinox in Tears is underground inside the Korda Lake Cave, but he lies directly under where this old Lynel was. We'll come back to the Korda Lake Cave in a moment. For now, let's head north to Tobio's Hollow. There's a cave system where at the end you'll throw a spear through a ring to reveal the Utoja Shrine. Also found around here is the Tobio's Hollow Chasm, accessible through a fallen piece of Zonai architecture debris, but the entrance is hidden and can only be opened during the hunt for the 5th Sage. This area is surrounded by deadly bog water in Breath of the Wild, but regular water in Tears of the Kingdom. Also in Breath of the Wild are 2 Korok puzzles and a DLC chest containing Xanth's helmet. Eastward on the Gia Highlands, there was a guardian stalker, but since those have been eradicated, we now find a black Hinox sleeping in its old patrol path. Even farther east is the Toto Sa Shrine in Breath of the Wild behind some bombable rock along a river. This entry is now blocked off by a fallen sky boulder. And if we look towards the source of this small river, there's a tiny island at the base of the waterfall that used to have a rock to lift, but now it's got a corked up Korok. Climbing up the cliffside to the actual source, Breath of the Wild had a small cave blocked by bombable rock. There were 6 treasure chests inside, among other things, whereas in Tears of the Kingdom, it's obviously opened deeper and we find the Mount Floria cave, which is a cool one to explore, but to be honest, I was expecting a better prize inside, like some sort of armor piece or something, rather than just a bubble frog at the end, given the enemy presence and fortification found down here, not to mention the cave does go through and comes out behind the Riola Springs waterfall, where the Shota Sa shrine was found in Breath of the Wild. But oh well. Back to the entry of this cave we started from, there's another double Korok spot in the tree up above in the cliffside a little higher up. It used to have a rock to lift on top of the tree, now there's a jar from one of the branches you can break open. Then, a bit south, to the peak of Mount Floria, is yet another double Korok. It used to be the old standard go-to lift up the rock, but now where the rock was is a pinwheel that spawns 3 balloon targets. Continuing down into the Floria River system, crazy as it may seem, there's another double Korok puzzle in the Riola Spring, where you used to have to use Magnesis to lift the chain ball into the center of the 4 pillars. Now there's a boulder already there, and you must use Ultra Hand to lift it away and lift the rock underneath it. Riola Spring, by the way, is where Farosh, the electric dragon of courage, spawns from every morning, making an excellent place to set up a campfire and farm dragon parts, as discussed in detail in one of my earliest videos on this channel. Behind the waterfall here, as I mentioned a moment ago, was the Shota Sa shrine in Breath of the Wild, and the alternate entry or exit for the Mount Floria cave. There are actually 4 total caves around this body of water. The Korta Lake Cave is a drafty place with a bubble frog, and don't forget that blue Hinox I mentioned a while ago. He's the middle bro of the 3 brother Hinox as seen in Necluda during Breath of the Wild. Now they're part of a side quest with a reward of fried mighty bananas instead of a shrine quest. Talk about a demotion. Kalora Lake Cave goes through and contains the eldest Hinox. The upper entry on the island is blocked by 2 boulders, but in Breath of the Wild it's a whole opening to another mini cave blocked by bombable rock, where inside there were 8 ore deposits, including a rare one. And the entry next to the Kalora Lake itself is marked by a Korok metal block puzzle in Breath of the Wild. The block you need to complete the puzzle is in the lake, and I would have loved to have seen a treasure chest or something here in Tears of the Kingdom, just saying. Then there's the Rodai Lakefront Tunnel, which is not really a tunnel, but more of a regular cave with only 1 entry/exit. This place is dark enough to necessitate Bright Bloom seeds, and at the bottom is the youngest Hinox brother. Heading southeast and back over Kalora Lake and up on top the hill is a mound of rock bearing the Kakad Nata shrine in Breath of the Wild. The only way to reveal the shrine is by attracting lightning to strike the pile, or by standing on top and using Urbosa's Fury. In Tears of the Kingdom, an enemy fort has been built here around a tree that mysteriously grew full size within the time between games. Southwest in the Ibarra Forest is another double Korok spot using the giant owl offering statues. Back during the Calamity, the middle statue had a piece of luminous stone in its eye you needed to remove. Now it takes a bunch of bananas on the front statue's bowl. East of here, at the peak of Tuft Mountain, is supposedly, and I do mean supposedly, another double Korok spot. In Breath of the Wild, you would lift up a rock, and the information I have shows there's supposed to be a pinwheel where the rock was, where you'd shoot balloon targets that spawn. But in Tears, I could not find the pinwheel. I have no idea why it wasn't here, where it should be. I stood in the exact place, but the mountain is 3 units of measurement short. I imagine that's where the Korok spawns after hitting the targets. Whatever, dude. Forget that little guy. So heading north of here over the heart-shaped Lover's Pond, because in Breath of the Wild is a match to make here, along with 7 hardy radishes, but no love found in Tears of the Kingdom. Now continuing north all the way down to the Atun Valley is the Atun Valley Cave. Technically this is in East Necluda and it's just a Horriblin lair. Heading down the path leading to the east takes us into Lurlin Village, where there's now a fence with a sign marking the village is closed due to a pirate invasion. The Sheikah Ya-Rin and the Zonai Sifumim shrines are used for fast traveling here are right in front and behind of one another's respective locations, with nothing found in their counterpart spot. But in Tears, the flora still exists around where the Sheikah shrine was. Of course, Lurlin is in peril when we first find it in Tears of the Kingdom. During the Calamity, it was so much more tranquil and quiet in this corner of the map. Now all the buildings are burned down and there's just chaos running amok. Exploring down the Lurlin village well only discovers another member of the monster tribe to take out. This well was also absent in Breath of the Wild. And eventually you can work with Bolson to restore the entire village back to its former glory through a similar series of steps akin to the building out the Hitano house and Terrytown side quests during the Calamity. There are several treasure chests in the bay, but one pair matches up. Right here, there used to be a purple rupee inside. Now it's a blue rupee, kind of an expression of the sorry state of the Hyrulean economy between the two games, which I could make a whole separate video about. Leave a comment saying rupees, or I need rupees, or Hylian economic crisis if that's something you want to see. Anyway, down on Corn Beach, where Kilton used to set up his Fang and Bone shop, is now the starting point of the Lurlin Water Rally races after you've completed the Lurlin Resort project. But you can see how the sand is darker and somewhat baked looking where he used to do business. It was always like this in this spot, so it's not his fault. Northeast from here we find the Gamma Cove, where a stone talus awaits through the years, eventually being joined by some Bokos to become a battle talus. And a little bit farther northeast on Palmore Beach are the 3 shattered, scattered monument pieces, which when you take a picture of them and show them to Garini will reveal the Kaya Shrine in Breath of the Wild. As for the fragmented monuments themselves, there's nothing in Tears where the 2 along Palmore Beach used to be, so moving southwest to Rimba Beach is a geoglyph dragon tier from memory number 7 titled Sonia is Caught by Treachery. The one where major plot point spoilers happen. One of the more interesting dragon tier swaps from Breath of the Wild is that there used to be a rock to lift here with a chance for a valuable stone underneath. I've seen amber, flint, and ruby in my testing, so I'm willing to bet there's a small percentage chance for sapphire, topaz, or even diamond too. Pretty cool. Following the geoglyph design of the scimitar's curve around Cape Cracia, we encounter a trio of bokoblins camping out that's grown to a tribe following their boss Boko leader. And all the way to the tip of Soka Point, where the 3rd fragmented monument was, is now a treasure chest buried in the sand containing a star fragment. Oh, and one more double Korok spot, of course. It used to be under a rock at the base of the palm tree, but now it lives atop the tree and will come out to say hello if you climb up and examine the fairy lights. Fun fact, it's the same Korok fellow who's been living his best life, minding his business out here in paradise on the beach the whole time. Did I miss anything interesting? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the tour, let me know by liking the video. It helps the channel out immensely. And if you really liked it, subscribe so that you make sure to catch the next one when it comes out. Thank you so very much for watching. I'll be back as soon as I can with more content. So until then, stay cool and always keep punching out there. Aloha.